Hey guys, Cronus Falls here, and before we get into the top 10 epics and Raid Shadow Legends, I just want to do a quick shout out to my new clan, Titans of Tartarus. We are a Nightmare, Ultra Nightmare clan, and we are looking for more members. We're currently at 16 out of 30, and if we take a look over here on the clan boss, we've got him down to about 50% HP at about halfway through the day. So we are definitely looking pretty good on him, but we need some more help. So again, if you can at least 3-key the Nightmare clan boss or are an Ultra Nightmare hitter looking for a new clan, send in an application. We are accepting members currently. The tag is CFCT and the name is Titans of Tartarus. Now let's go ahead and move on to our list of top 10 epics. So before we get into it, let me just tell you how I'm kind of rating these. Basically, the idea is it's going to be for overall use in the game. So there are going to be some epics that are very good that are not on this list. Like a good example would be Seer. Seer is amazing for speed runs through dungeons, but she's not going to be on this list because for the average player, she is not going to be a staple coming into any of your teams. She is just a very niche end-game speed clearing champion. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and get into it now. At number 10, we are going to be coming into the Undead Hordes, and we are going to be looking at Gorgorab. So Gorgorab is very good in the early game arena and very good overall as far as dungeon progression goes. If we take a look at his kit here on his A1, he attacks one enemy and has a 50% chance of removing one random buff. So decent A1, but not really what we're looking for on him. It's more of the rest of his kit that is impressive. On his A2, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% and places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. This is on a 3-turn cooldown. So turn meter boosters are always good. There's not a ton of them in the game, and Gorgorab is one of the better ones. It is only a 15% boost, but it does give a 50% increased attack, and he's very good for the early stages of arena because he brings a speed aura as well, increases ally speed in the arena by 23%. So very helpful in the early game. You'll see him a lot in the arena in like bronze and silver. In gold he falls off a little bit, but that's just because nowadays everyone's got a Lysandra or an Arbiter, so that's just kind of how it goes. But then what makes him great for dungeons actually is on his A3 here on a 5-turn cooldown, revives any dead allies with 40% HP once booked, or 45 rather, HP once booked, and then heals all allies by 45%. So actually, sorry, I did that wrong. He revives them with 25% HP, then heals them by 45%, so basically bringing everyone up to 70%. On a 5-turn cooldown, and if you weren't revived, you still get that 45% heal, so pretty good overall. So that's our number 10 slot, Gorgorab. Let's go ahead and move on to number 9. We're going to be coming into the Orcs, and we are going to be taking a look at one of the newer epics, Sandlashed Survivor. So Sandlashed Survivor is pretty unique, but let's go ahead and get into her kit here to show why. On the A1 here, she attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 30% chance of placing a provoke debuff on the target for 1 turn if this champion has no debuffs. Heals by 15% of the damage inflicted if this champion is under any debuff. So provoke on an A1 is a nice little thing. It is 30%, 40, 50% chance when booked, so not a bad percentage at all. And then I don't really like the heals 15% if she's under any debuffs because, I mean, chances are a lot of the time she will be under some sort of debuff. Even if you're against like the Void clan boss, she's going to be under a poison part of the time. So, you know, I think that actually hurts a little bit. I would have liked it a little bit more if it just had the 50% chance of placing a provoke. And it does hit twice, so it does get 2 chances to proc that, which is pretty cool. So that is her A1. But what's really unique about her is her A2 here. On a 3-turn cooldown, she attacks all enemies, decreases the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn, which is pretty cool, but also increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn. So this makes her exceptional in the clan boss, especially when paired with champions like a Martyr or a Skullcrusher, a Bad Alcazar. You know, People who put up just insane buffs. Very good with people if you're running a speed team that put up a speed buff, something like an Apothecary or a Krisk, something like that. Basically, she comes in, increases the duration of all your buffs, and it's very good in dungeons as well. You know, if you're coming in there with like your Apothecary or whatever, you're boosting the increased speed. So there is a lot of utility in this move. And then another great thing that is amazing for Clan Boss as well is her passive here. On a 4-turn cooldown, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns when an ally's HP drops below 50%. Also places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. So if one of your allies gets knocked below 50%, which is pretty common, you know, in a dungeon scenario, the waves hit pretty hard. It can happen like in the Ice Golem, for instance, when he does his big slam. That's going to hurt a lot. And in Clan Boss, as you get into the later rounds, he's going to be knocking your people down pretty low. So this is pretty sweet. She comes in there, keeps people alive, and she doesn't take any damage from the first hit, which is sweet. So overall, she just brings a lot of damage mitigation with that passive, and it's only when you need it, which is cool. Because otherwise she's just coming out there doing her A2 and her A1. She doesn't need to waste a turn to do it. So very cool ability, and it makes her very unique as a champion. And then finally, she has a defense aura, which is very good. It's ally defense in all battles by 25%. Again, amazing for the Clan Boss, good in dungeons as well. So overall, she's good everywhere in the game. You can bring her into the Fire Knight. She's got a 2-hit A1. You can bring her into the Clan Boss. Not great in the Dragon per se because she is Spirit Affinity. But I could even see some use in Spider if you're bringing in some block debuffs, stuff like that. So just overall amazing champion, and she comes in number 9 on our list. Let's go ahead and move up to number 8. And we are going to be looking in the High Elves at Royal Guard. So Royal Guard, most of you might be thinking, well, he kind of falls into the same category as Seer, where he just hits really hard, kind of more in-game. But he actually brings a lot of utility beside that, so we're going to go ahead and include him on this list in the number 8 spot. So let's check out his kit here. On his A1, attacks one enemy, has a 65% chance when booked of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. So decreased defense on an A1, very good. 65% chance is pretty high as well. On his A2 here, attacks all enemies. Damage increases according to enemy max HP. So this is where he hits super hard. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, and you cannot book it down any further than that, but you can book up the damage, which is good to do for him. So this ability is amazing against the Spider. If you're coming in against the Spider boss, he comes into your team definitely towards the later stages because he just does a ton of damage, and he can bring the decreased defense as well. So if you need that slot filled, he can do it for you. Also, if it happens to get resisted on whoever you did bring it in from, he can potentially come in and place it. So some nice utility there. And then huge hits here, and it is AoE, so you're knocking down some of the spiderlings as well. He's also run in the later game in dungeons like the Dragon or the Ice Golem, so he can come in and just knock down huge chunks of HP and do some speed runs with those. Then on his A3 here, attacks 4 times at random. Each hit has a 60% chance or 75% chance when booked of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Again, very good against Spider. Also good against the Fire Knight in the earlier stages if you want to bring him in. He's not going to be great against 20, but he could probably do some work for you, like I said, in earlier stages, maybe up to like 15. Each hit also has a 60% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 25%. So again, very good against the Spider, very good against the Fire Knight. Turn meter control, very good for both of those dungeons. Good against the Ice Golem as well. So he gets a lot of utility out of this. It is on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, so not too bad. And so with all of that utility, plus an aura here, increased ally attack in dungeons by 35%. This is an aura you won't use too much, but in later game speedruns, potentially you could be coming in using an attack aura. so definitely don't discount it completely. This is pretty high for dungeons. So with all of that, he comes in at our number 8 slot. And let's go ahead and move along to number 7. So number 7, we are going to be coming back into the orcs, and we are going to be looking at Zargala. Now Zargala is an attack-based champion, which is why she's a little lower on this list, but her utility is amazing. So let's go ahead and see here. On her A1, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 1 turn. That is the big version of weaken, and a pretty good skill to come in with. I mean, weaken isn't amazing, but against a boss, 25% extra damage is big. Also in early game clan boss, she can get some use out of this. So I would say you could probably bring her in through brutal and get some good utility out of her. But let's move on to her A2 here. Attacks one enemy, instantly activates the crack armor skill if the target is killed by this attack. This is on a 2-turn cooldown when booked, which is very good. Basically, she can use it every other turn, and it activates her A3 here if she kills someone, which is attacks all enemies 3 times. With that triple hit, she can one-shot enemies like Rotos in the arena, which is amazing. After the first hit, has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. That books up to a 75% chance on a 4-turn cooldown. So a really good ability. It does tons of damage, gets you decreased defense in an AoE fashion, and like I said, can one-shot Rotos. So just amazing utility all around there. And then she starts out with this move typically, and does a ton of damage, and then she can follow it up with the Devastate here, come in, finish someone off on the next turn, and then throw out a crack armor again. So a lot of synergy in her kit here. She increases the damage you're dealing with the A1 as well. So overall, great utility. Like I said, pretty good for early game clan boss because she does give you weaken and decreased defense. Granted, the decreased defense is on a 4-turn cycle, so not the most consistent uptime, but that's why it is for the earlier level bosses. She also brings an aura that increases ally accuracy in all battles by 40, which isn't the best, but still pretty decent if you're struggling to get accuracy in your dungeon runs, or even earlier game clan boss. She can come in and help you place all those good debuffs that you need. So that is Zargala. Now let's go ahead and move on to the Knights Revenant, where we are going to be looking at Sepulcher Sentinel. So Sepulcher Sentinel is coming into our number 6 slot here, and I was gonna say she's a little bit of a clan boss specialist, but honestly she's not. She's very good everywhere in the game. So let's go ahead and show off her kit here. On her A1, she attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. This books up to a 60% chance. And so she has that decreased attack on her A1, amazing for the clan boss, also good for dungeons. Getting that on someone like the dragon is very good to help your team take less damage. So overall, just a very good ability. She's one of the few champions in the game who has a consistent decreased attack on their A1. Let's go ahead and move on to the A2 here. Places a 60% increased defense buff and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So this is an amazing ability. You get that increased defense. It's going to make your champions harder to kill. It's also going to make her, as well as your other defense champions, deal more damage. And she also blocks debuffs for 2 turns, which is great. Basically, that allows you in dungeons like Dragon to not take all of those poisons, and Ice Golem not get that decreased defense. Just overall, very good utility there. And Spider not take the poisons. She is an amazing tank for the Spider boss if you don't have a Miscreated monster. So keep that in mind if you have her. Now, the 4-turn cooldown is a little bit long, unfortunately. But there have been strategies that have come out nowadays where you can get her into a 4-3 speed tune on your Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss team. And basically you can get that block debuffs on perfectly every time to block the stun. So just a ton of great utility there in that A2. She also has an amazing passive here that is very unique, kind of like Sandlashed, she has an amazing unique passive as well. I think they came out around the same time, if not at the same time. But on her passive here, has a 25% chance, or I believe 50% when booked. Yeah, 50% chance when booked of completely blocking incoming damage when an ally is attacked. Occurs once per turn. So this is absolutely amazing. For instance, if the clan boss is coming in for a stun attack, there is a 50% chance that it will just deal no damage. Also very good in arena. You come in with your big AoE nuke and one of the enemies just doesn't take any damage at all because they have a Sepulcher Sentinel on the team, and now they have a chance to retaliate. So very interesting passive, very unique like I said, and a lot of cool stuff out of there. You can potentially survive a lot longer in your clan boss runs just by this proccing if you get lucky with your RNG. So very cool value there. And finally, she has an increased ally defense in all battles by 25% aura. Very good aura, again, for clan boss and dungeons. So overall, if you have a Sepulcher Sentinel, I would definitely suggest building her. She is one of the best epics in the game, just all around. She can come into any dungeon for you. I would say her weakest is probably Fire Knight. So maybe not there, but even Ice Golem and Spider, she can do some pretty decent work for you, so don't count her out despite her affinity. Let's go ahead and move on to our number 5 slot here. So it may surprise you that we're going to be seeing him this early in the list, but I don't think he's overall the best epic in the game, and that is Skullcrusher. So Skullcrusher, definitely one of the most wanted epics in the game. He is one of only 3 champions that give team-wide counterattack, and the only epic to do so. And team-wide counterattack is an amazing ability, but not the most useful ability everywhere in the game. So that's why he's only coming in at our number 5 slot. Let's go ahead and take a look here on his A1. Attacks one enemy, places a 50% heal reduction debuff if the target's defense is lower than this champion's. So, I mean, a pretty decent A1 here, heal reduction. You could land that on the Fire Knight potentially and stop him from healing as much. But typically you don't really want to build any accuracy on a Skullcrusher because he's probably in your clan boss team. And if he is, you do not want him taking up a debuff slot with the heal reduction. So we'll kind of have to pretend that this doesn't exist when grading him. So basically just an A1 that just hits, nothing more than that if you're not going to build any accuracy on him. But on his A2 here, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places a counterattack buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. That is on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. And that was what I was talking about. Full team ally counterattack. Just absolutely amazing. Ally protection is also the best form of damage mitigation in the game. So he also gets to be unkillable for one of those hits, which is great. It helps you to survive longer into the fight. Now, he can potentially get himself killed because in a clan boss setup, you know, you use the ally protection and counterattack on the first AoE, but then when the second harder hitting one comes through, you take all of that damage. So, you know, he can potentially kill himself, but I mean, his value is just so great. And if you pair him with another ally attack or ally protection champion rather, like a rearguard sergeant or a tyrant Ixlimore, he just is absolutely insane. So definitely don't count Skullcrusher out. I don't think he's quite as good. I would say I don't think he's as good as Valkyrie for sure, but I think he's almost as good as Martyr. He is just an amazing champion, and definitely don't discount him if you have him. On his passive here is actually pretty cool as well. Decreases the duration of all debuffs on this champion by 1 turn at the start of each turn. So this is pretty cool for stuff like dungeons and arena. If he gets stunned or something like that, he can just come through and still get his hit off. Well, there is one thing to say, which is if he gets stunned, you still won't get the cooldown on your skills on that turn. So you don't want to use him as your leader in the clan boss. because it will throw you out of rotation if he gets stunned, even though he's going to go ahead and cleanse it and still get an attack off. So keep that in mind, but still a pretty cool passive here. And finally, his aura, increase ally resistant faction crypts by 45. Not the worst thing in the world, actually. Resistance in faction crypts is pretty good. It can help you to not get so many fears and such on yourself. So I will say a decent aura, definitely not the best one out there. You probably would want something like Bellower's speed aura. But let's go ahead and move on now to our number 4 slot. And we are going to be coming into my favorite epic in the game, Madam Serris in the Dark Elves. So Madam Serris is an amazing arena champion and overall very good champion in the game. She, on her A1 here, attacks one enemy, has a 20% chance of placing a fear debuff for 1 turn. That is a 30% chance if the target is under 1 debuff, and 45% chance if they are under 2 or more debuffs. So fear, pretty decent debuff, basically a 50% chance that the opponent doesn't get to take their turn. So pretty good A1 there. On the A2, attacks all enemies, has a 40% chance of stealing 1 random buff from each target. That books up to a 50% chance on a 3-turn cooldown. And if you do manage to steal a buff, places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns, and places a true fear debuff for 1 turn on the enemy who has their buff stolen. So true fear, again, a pretty good debuff like fear, 50% chance to not take their turn, but it also puts whatever skill they tried to use on cooldown. So definitely better, and a very good hard CC debuff coming out on our A2 here. And then block debuffs for 2 turns is really solid as well, especially in arena where the opponents are constantly trying to place debuffs on you to do more damage. Or let's say you're against a Torment as well, for instance. This comes up a lot. Basically, you come in, you use the A2, you get your block debuffs, and now you can go ahead and speed boost against the Torment without any worries. So a lot of utility there on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. And yeah, that's it for the A2. Let's move on to the A3. So on the A3 here, she removes all buffs from enemies, places a 50% decreased attack debuff and a 60% decreased defense debuff on all enemies for 3 turns. So this ability is what she is known for. It is on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, and 3 turns decreased attack and decreased defense. The big versions in arena is like an eternity. That's probably more than the entirety of the fight. And she also removes all their buffs. So if they're coming in with like big shield sets or whatever, you just say goodbye. As long as you have the accuracy to strip them off, you'll be looking good, and then you can just hit their HP at face value. So probably the best epic in the game for arena. And like I said, my favorite epic in the game, both for her kit and her aesthetic. It's amazing. Let's go ahead and take a look at her passive here, which is Grace. Places a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. When attacked while under a shield buff, has a 35% chance of placing a fear debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. So pretty decent here. You get some good value out of it in dungeons and such. It used to be decent in arena as well, but with the introduction of Torment, she can potentially freeze herself at the start of each turn, which is really unfortunate. That is why I run my Madam Serris in immunity gear now, in order to counter that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, pretty decent passive. It's just if you're against a Torment, then it can potentially do more harm than good. So keep that in mind when using her. But I mean, overall, decreased defense and decreased attack are very strong across all dungeons. You need an AoE decreased defense. She's void and it doesn't hit, so there's absolutely no chance of hitting weak and not getting placed. And unlike someone like a Tayrel or a War Maiden, she also brings the decreased attack, so your champions are going to be taking less damage from the enemy waves. So overall, very good value there, and that is why she comes in at our number 4 slot. Now let's go ahead and move on to number 3. You're going to be seeing a theme with the next couple of champions. We are going to be coming into the Banner Lords, I think he is, yes, and finding Stag Knight. Now Stag Knight, like Madam Serris, brings an AoE decreased defense and attack. Let's go over his kit here on the A1 first. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance when booked. of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. So that's a really solid chance of landing, and decreased speed is very good against the harder dungeons such as the Fire Knight and the Spider. Anything you can do to help control their turn meter is amazing, and a 30% slow speed really does a lot for you, even if you might not think it. So a very solid A1 there. It also hits pretty decently hard. He's got a good multiplier on it, so if you're building him to do some decent damage, he can definitely crank it out for you. Also on the A2 here, attacks all enemies, has a 95% chance when booked of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff and a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. This is on a 3-turn cooldown. So since he is a spirit affinity champion and it does hit, there is a chance to hit weak, so keep that in mind. If it hits weak, it will not place the debuff. You're also going to want to make sure to snatch up the Sniper Mastery to make it a 100% chance to land both of those. So keep that in mind as well. But I mean, between these 2 abilities, it sounds kind of basic, right? You know, he places decreased defense and decreased attack, and he slows. Like, okay, just 2 abilities there. Doesn't seem so special, but they're actually really good for, like I said, the Fire Knight and the Spider, as well as the Ice Golem. Slow is pretty good on the Ice Golem as well, make him hit you less. So don't discount him. When I first saw him, I read his kit and I was like, oh, he sounds pretty good. But once I started using him, it was just, I was blown away. He is amazing for dungeons, so keep him in mind in all of your dungeon runs. He does a pretty good job in Dragon 20 as well, even though he is off affinity. He can be your tank for you. He's got pretty good base stats, about 21k HP, 1000 base defense, and 107 base speed is just amazing for an epic. He also has this passive here, which isn't really too impactful, but places a 50% increased accuracy buff on an ally for 1 turn each time the ally has a debuff resisted by an enemy. So, I mean, it's decent, but overall, I'm not going to get that much value out of it. Basically, if they used a cooldown skill, they're not going to have it back next turn, so the increased accuracy isn't going to matter anyways. But both him and Madam Serris can come into your clan boss teams as well if they are a speed team especially, and get that decreased attack and decreased defense going for you. If your team is fast enough, they can both keep it up with 100% uptime. Madam Serris even better because she does only have to take 4 turns for the opponent's 3 instead of 3 for their 2, and hers also doesn't hit weak if it is the wrong affinity. So she's a little bit better for clan boss, I think, but he'll do more damage, so there is some trade-off there. Let's go ahead and move on now to our number 3 slot, or our number 2 slot. Sorry, I got off here at some point, but we're gonna be moving on to our number 2, and that is going to be in the High Elves, Tayrel. So Tayrel here, on his A1, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 40% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So this books up to a 50% chance when booked on each hit, so he has a better chance, I think, on his A1 than anyone in the game besides Altan. I think they're about the same. So a very consistent decreased attack, especially when paired with a counter attack champion like Skullcrusher, for instance. So very good for clan boss there. Also on his A2, on a 4-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance when booked of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. If the target is under a decreased attack debuff, it will place a sleep debuff for 1 turn. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So pretty good value here on the clan boss. You get your decreased defense. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, so not super consistent, but still a pretty good deal. He can bring that for you. And then in dungeons, it's especially amazing. It's AoE decreased defense, which you want in all of your dungeon runs. And if he's already hit them with his A1 and given them decreased attack, or someone else has done it, he can put them to sleep. So they're not going to be able to take their next turn as long as nobody wakes them up. So just overall, very good utility on his A2. His A3, no use at all in the clan boss, but pretty good in dungeons. On a 4-turn cooldown, oh, also good in arena. But on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, attacks one enemy, decreases the target's turn meter by 50%. If the attack fully depletes the turn meter, it will place a stun debuff for 2 turns. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So, like I said, amazing in dungeons. In waves, you can stun someone for 2 turns, which is just insane. They're not going to get a chance to move, basically. And then in boss fights, I mean, both the Spider and Fire Knight are very susceptible to turn meter reduction. That's the main strategy for beating them. He is weak against Fire Knight 20, but when you're coming up through the stages, he can definitely come in and do a lot of work for you there, especially since he has a 2-hit A1. And then against the Spider, between the decreased defense, decreased attack, and decreased turn meter, he's just got a ton of utility to help deal with her. He also brings this aura, which is increased allied defense in all battles by 25%. So very good aura, as I've said before, for dungeons and clan boss. So overall, he's just got a ton of utility everywhere in the game. I would say, as far as between him and Stag Knight, you could really flip-flop them as far as which one should be higher on this list. I personally think Stag Knight is better for dungeons than Tayrel is, but that Tayrel is better for clan boss. So it's really all just dependent on which one of them, or not which one of them, but rather where you need them. So for instance, if you feel that you really need to progress in the clan boss, Tayrel is going to be the better option for you. But if you're struggling in dungeons, then Stag Knight is most likely going to be your better option. So that is it for Tayrel, and let's go ahead and get into my number 1 epic, and that is going to be in the Knights Revenant, and we are looking at Miscreated Monster. Now, I've said this before, but when they released the Halloween champions, I think they got it backwards on which ones were legendaries and which ones were epics, because Miscreated Monster and Madame Serris are by far and away better than Harvest Jack and Brackus could ever dream of being. But especially Miscreated Monster here for just all-around use in the game. On his A1 here, attacks one enemy 2 times. So first of all, note a multi-hit, which could be decent against the Fire Knight. He is off affinity for 20, but he's still pretty decent there. Each hit has a 15% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. That books up to a 25% chance. So 25% chance for a stun on an A1 is pretty good. Also has a 60% chance when booked of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 1 turn if the stun debuff is placed. This is damage based on HP as well, which is very high base HP. But I mean, just overall amazing A1 there. You can potentially get a stun as well as a decreased defense, so a lot of value there. Then on his A2, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. That's amazing. AoE stun is always good. Stun is the best CC in the game, and if you can do it to half the wave, then you're looking pretty good for control going through dungeons, especially if you have him fast and he's coming through and getting these off pretty frequently. But the big thing here, especially for Spider, is places a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns, equal to 25% of the damage inflicted. This is on a 3-turn cooldown, so you can get him hitting hard by giving him a ton of HP and good crit rate and crit damage. And he is going to be coming in, he's going to be stunning spiderlings, so they're not coming in and hitting your tank as much. And he's just going to give absolutely massive shields in the spider dungeon. Like, when I run him, there's no chance any of my champions are ever going to take damage because I've got him fast enough to keep them up 100% of the time. And it is just nuts the amount that he can do. He's also blue affinity, which is good against Spider 20. But, I mean, while he is just the absolute carry for Spider, his shields and stuns are very helpful all throughout all of the dungeons. I mean, the CC and the survivability that they bring are huge. And especially when coupled with the A3 here, which places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 3 turns, not 2, and heals this champion by 50% of their max HP. Places a 15% continuous heal buff on this champion for 3 turns. So he comes in there, he does this huge shield on the spiderlings, or a pretty decent shield in any other dungeon. And then he also comes in after that and gives ally protection for 3 turns. And if he's low, he heals himself up. He's got some continuous healing for when he takes damage from the ally protection. He just sustains himself huge, especially with that high base HP. And so you just build him with a ton of HP. He lives forever. He makes all of your other champions take less damage. And just an amazing carry throughout all the content. This is actually pretty good in the clan boss as well. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, but if you did get him on a 4-3 tune with a Skullcrusher, he could come in and take away the ally protection for the second AoE, and therefore he could work pretty similarly to a Tyrant Ixlymore. So he's just got utility everywhere in the game. He also has amazing synergy between his A3 and his passive. His passive places a fear debuff on the attacker for 1 turn whenever an ally is attacked while under an ally protection buff. So you're going to have, a lot of uptime on this ally protection, and anyone who attacks you is getting CC'd. So, just overall, I don't think anyone better as a carry in the game. He does so much. He has so much CC built into his kit. He's got sustain built into his kit. And not only does he have sustain for himself, but he's got sustain for his allies built into his kit. And on top of all of that, he has an aura, which increases ally HP in the arena by 33%. So not the best aura in the world, but not terrible either. If you have a lot of HP champions you're coming in with, especially in lower level arena, this could be decent for you. So, as his name implies, this guy is just a monster. Base HP is about 23,000. Base defense is a little low at 815, but when you get his HP super high, his defense doesn't have to be that high. And then 95 base speed is a little bit low, but overall, who's complaining? This guy is an absolute monster and comes in at number 1 on my list for overall utility throughout the game. Alright, so that's going to be it for my top 10, guys. Let's go ahead and go back over them real quick. At number 10, I have Gorgorab. Number 9, Sandlashed Survivor. Number 8, Royal Guard. Number 7, Zargala. Number 6, Sepulcher Sentinel. Number 5, Skullcrusher. Number 4, Madam Serris. 3, Stag Knight. 2, Tayrel. And at number 1, Miscreated Monster. If you guys disagree with me or think someone else should be on this list, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Always happy to hear your guys' feedback. That being said, make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Join the Discord or leave a comment down below if you have anything you'd like to talk about. I'm always happy to give you guys advice. And once again, if you are a Nightmare or Ultra Nightmare hitter who's looking to switch up clans, take a look at my new clan, Titans of Tartarus. We are recruiting new members. So thanks for watching, guys.